Oof, my face just there. All right, looks like everything's up and running. Hopefully my mic is connected and the chat is on. And I think some of y'all are tuned in. I have this window up like 3 times, so honestly, I don't know if I'm watching now or if that's people, but I'll hope it's y'all. So I was just typing in the chat that hopefully everyone can see. On my other window, it looks like we can. Um, Feel free to type any questions or comments, any questions you might have about the course overall, any labs or homeworks or quizzes or format questions, or are we going to learn this, or why aren't we doing this? Um, yeah, any questions at all, feel free to go ahead and post them. I guess also you could post on Piazza, um, and I could look there too, but I would kind of prefer the chat. And in the meantime, I guess until I see anything kind of pop up in this chat window, I'll maybe just kind of go over the course as a whole, and maybe it's slight background on me. So when people watch this archived video, it can be another kind of um, video to provide them with information about the course. So I think on the announcements, I did post this video. Um, that ended up being about 10 minutes to kind of give an overview of O-aligned Canvas. Which text editor do you recommend downloading? I use Notepad++, honestly, for all my kind of text editing stuff. Um, in terms of like writing Python, definitely I would say idle is not the most like novice friendly option, but it should come with your default Python install. Again, on pages, there should be some videos. Yeah, so here's like a video that kind of talks about it, and here's some instructions on getting idle that hopefully everyone can view. But it's also what I have pulled up right here to kind of write your Python and test it. And you can make the Python files, and it should be fine for everything we need to do for the class, definitely. Um, there are a lot of other options that you can do for more heavier Python projects that involve more than one kind of file and frameworks and libraries and all that. I personally use PyCharm, um, which is nice and free if you're a student. Yeah, this JetBrains PyCharm right here that hopefully shows up on my start menu. But I think that's a little heavy for what we need now, so the idle is fine. Assuming you have a programming stuff, if you did just mean text editor, I personally just use Notepad++. Um, if you're familiar with that, you can, save the file types as whatever. You can do the different themes for it. There's line numbers. It's nice. A lot of people use Sublime Text as well. But and in terms for so like the lab this week does have a kind of like a textual component. So you could use Word for that. I use Google Drive a lot, so I'll use Google Docs. Um, if you don't use Google Drive and like Google Docs a lot right now, when you start the program, like come fall, you will definitely be using that a lot to collaborate with like your peers. And it's like, oh, put this file on Drive, share it with me, and your Andrew email login should have like the 15 gigs free of Drive. That's probably unused right now since y'all are just starting. So I would definitely suggest taking advantage of that. Which actually, I don't even know if I said that on the labs. You could submit a Google Doc too, assuming the permissions are public. Yeah, I guess maybe the ETC would cover that. But yeah, the also for the lab, y'all, or for any time that there needs to be kind of a written text, feel free to submit a Google Doc. Just make sure the sharing permissions are on. But yeah, so some people have been using OLI already, which is nice. You can access it here. I don't want to click it because it'll kind of bug out my other OLI view I have here, but that's the way you can access it. And then the video under the announcement should kind of talk about how you can click the view course syllabus and it'll pop it out to get more of this kind of view. So it looks like everyone's been finding that and getting registered, which is nice. Kind of working through it a little bit. OLI is kind of this in-house to CMU Mookie ebook platform that has been around for quite some time. Um, but I would say Def is set apart from kind of the edX typical Coursera type things, and that's very more instructional text and activities. Because all the learning sciences research out there says you learn better by doing, and so it's better to kind of have these slightly engaging activities than to just kind of watch someone be a sage on the stage and just lecture for like an hour, while still covering the material in a nice way. So hopefully everyone's kind of finding this to be useful and intuitive. This course in particular has been cleaned up a little bit from the last year's used, but it has been used probably about 7 or 8 years now at CMU, and it's been going under some nice iterations and improvements every time. So hopefully it's in a pretty good state. I went over this before we launched this course, and I found everything to be kind of there and straightforward and working. But again, I might have some expert blind spots. So if you are working on any of the pages in OLI or doing any of the activities and you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense, or why would it be like this, feel free to post on Piazza or come to office hours and ask that question, because nothing's perfect. But yeah, while so I did have a question on this. So sometimes the little console windows like this are not working all the time. So like you'd expect that to turn 50, right? Yeah, and it doesn't work right now. Um, from the back end, it sometimes goes down. So I would definitely encourage you to just have a little idle window up like this, a little interpreter. And so if you did want to try doing that, you could go ahead and work through it on your own little window, or the ones that are the console windows like this. So these ones should always work. Well, they should. Maybe you have to run it first. Oh, there's me trying it. But if they aren't working now, hopefully by next week they should be up and running. But either way, I would suggest just having your own kind of thing here. I just think it's a cleaner window. You get more space. You will be using idle for class, so better to go ahead and do it here anyway. And a lot of, I mean, not so much in this section, but some of the latter sections get a little more involved. And so instead of just being like a 3-line function, you might be working with like more of a 15-line one, and that permitted space isn't that much. So kind of another reason to do it here. But if you were, accessing the OLI site on a machine that's not yours, or even mobile or something where you couldn't readily type in idle, then that's why these are kind of nice to have in there when they work. But all the other problems should be fine. Kind of also on that note, if you're working on these problems and you don't understand it, or you don't know the answer for sure, definitely just go ahead and try to guess. The feedback throughout all these questions is intended to help you learn. And all the questions aren't necessarily designed for you to get them right on the first try because, they're like embedded in the page where you're learning it. So, you read this little block of text once, we don't immediately expect you to get the next question right that deals with it. So feel free to, read some people, depending on if you already have familiarity with the content, you might want to try the problems first and then see how much you really need to read the material. But again, if you are rather novice to it, I do suggest reading word for word. It's not too much text comparatively, and it's written differently from like a traditional textbook because we know how students will be using this material. So it's trying to be concise, trying to play off the activities, and be more engaging and kind of less monotonous than just reading an old textbook or watching a video. And yeah, as I said, all the feedback is specifically designed to be an instructional opportunity. And then at the end of the OLI module, oh yeah, well actually before getting there, this kind of has using Python outside the module, which admittedly this page maybe should be earlier, which is what I tried to address with this bullet number 2 on kind of like using idle as you go throughout the OLI module and with these links about installing Python and getting started with idle, which hopefully everyone checked out this page prior to kind of diving in. And also hopefully everyone has Python and idle up by now. But if not, feel free to ask during these office hours or to post on Piazza, even if you're trying to install it and you get some kind of bug or a cryptic error message, maybe we can all help you out. So feel free to post on that. I'm not going to watch this video. But yeah, so then at the end, it's kind of this quiz. And as I mentioned in the other announcement video too, the purpose of the quiz is more of like a knowledge check. So every module kind of covers a set of key learning objectives, as you can see right here. These are the core 5 learning objectives that by the time you're done with this module, doing the activities and doing the homework, you should be able to do these confidently. And so the quiz enables me as an instructor to see, okay, well, one of the things is using, user-defined and built-in Python functions. And when you do the quiz, it helps me see, oh, well, students did really well with all the sections minus, using the print function. So then I can know next week during my office hours and recitation that I should maybe have a little 10-minute segment that helps clarify some of these issues that y'all encountered. So don't feel like you have to get like 100% on every quiz, especially because some parts of it are instructor graded, not like auto graded, because there's free response. Um, so if it does return a score to you, it might be lower, but don't fret. It's like I said, I want you to try, but the main purpose of that is for kind of a knowledge check, so I know how the content's going, where we might be struggling with, and where we might need more support with. So the following week, I could provide additional resources through one of these little page things at the start of the next module that might be like, oh, some students really struggled with function X. Here's a nice video or here's a nice write-up that kind of clarifies some of these muddy points. And same with the lab. Labs are due Thursday right before noon EST, so 11:59 a.m. And then the lab recitation starts literally the minute after it's due, which was intentional because I want to walk through the labs during the recitation lab section. So I will literally pull it up and I will just go and work through the whole lab and answer questions regarding the lab along the way. And I doubt it'll take us the whole hour. And then the rest of that time can be used for questions regarding the homework or whatever. So that's another thing where don't feel like you need to get 100% on that. Um, but the intention is that you should be doing pretty well on it, though, especially for this week's lab, question one. Um, I would expect everyone to do pretty well on that as you are kind of just typing in expressions into your Python shell. And then question two actually gets you to work on little functions. And question two and three in particular will be important for the homework because you're really dealing with a lot of functions there on this week's homework. So hopefully we can get any questions or issues worked out regarding lab parts two and three cranked out in the recitation section so everyone can do fine on the homework because I want everyone to succeed in the class. Hmm. I don't want to bore everyone just talking through the syllabus. Kind of talked on OLI a bunch already. Hopefully Canvas is intuitive enough to everyone. It does take some getting used to, but you will be using Canvas for some of your other courses during your time in the MHCI program. So I thought we might as well use Canvas for this course to kind of get everyone used to it, especially for this course I think is a little bit smaller in content than a lot of your other courses will be. So the Canvas is pretty straightforward for this. I think it's kind of a nice like crash course for Canvas to get you used to it. Piazza is really great. I'm not sure if any of y'all have used it in your undergrad before, but a lot of courses at CMU and actually at universities, kind of everywhere, it's becoming more and more popular. But Piazza is a great tool for asking questions that your peers can answer, that I can answer. You can post anonymously if you are embarrassed by the question, which you should never be. No such thing as a stupid question. Um, and I definitely encourage, especially I think the questions will pick up as we get more into this and the homeworks become more and more kind of involved. But I think after searching for a little bit, Piazza should be a go-to for where you should ask a question. And if you're on Piazza, you should look if your peers asked any of these questions that you may be able to answer. Because sometimes someone could be struggling with something for an hour and you could read the question and you could give them an answer in like 20 seconds that would kind of alleviate them from that problem. So it's nice to help your peers out. It's also one of those things where if you can explain it and kind of teach someone, then you can know yourself that you learned the material. It's kind of win-win. Hopefully this YouTube live stuff's going well. There were a lot of options to use like GoToMeeting and Zoom, and someone even suggested Twitch, which I thought might be a little too distracting. Um, and this seems to be working fine. I mean, the quality is not bad. Hopefully my mic's not bad. I can see the chat and it does automatically get uploaded, which is nice. And it seems at least some people have accessed it, which is good. Yeah, if I'm going to two conferences fairly soon, so I'll probably need to move around an office hour or two. I'll email and announce about that. Um, I think I have it on here somewhere, but if you do need like a one-on-one session rather than these kind of open office hours, feel free to email me or message me on Canvas or post on Piazza or something. And I'm definitely able to kind of meet one-on-one with y'all to work through anything. Like if you needed, like I don't think you can screen share in this kind of YouTube live thing. So if you did need to like show part of your code and you didn't want others to see it or something, then you could have the one-on-one with me. But if you did ever during these office hours or recitation want to point to like a little bit of code, I wouldn't suggest linking or sharing, your entire homework file because you don't want others to see the answers. But if you did have a question, like, these 4 lines of code, I'm not really sure why it executes to produce some result. You could link me that in the chat. You could post it on like Google Docs and share that link. You could email me the file. You could post a block on Piazza and say, hey, I posted this code block on Piazza. Could you go check it out? And we talk about it in office hours. Something like that. It's totally fine. I've never installed Python on my Mac before. What's your recommendation of installing Python and managing the Python environment? I heard something about content and virtual and stuff. Yeah, I don't. So I would say first off, if you never installed it on your Mac, I would go through the guide that is, this whole kind of website, the wiki book for a non-programmer's tutorial for Python 3. It's really great for everything, not just for installing Python. But yeah, I would go. That gives you like a launcher. I'm on Windows and I'm pretty much always on Windows, but it should be, yeah, so you can get the latest right here, which I maybe went through a little fast, but I clicked the Mac link here, gave me this, and then I'm not really sure what this page is, so I'm just going to downloads, Mac OS X, and then we want Python 3. And it should give you a download. Or maybe you have to click something and I'm just being dumb. Oh yeah, you do, down here. Yeah, then you can get the installer depending on if you're 32 or 64, if you want the tarball, but probably this one is what you'd want, and then it'll probably give you a little wizard. Virtual environments, I don't think you would really need it. That's kind of where you might want to like partition part of your machine, for instance, to have certain Python libraries and run a certain Python version. So for instance, you can see here, this is Python 2.7, this is 3.7. They definitely have some differences, but I would say the differences aren't too major to what most people are doing. But there's some like older programs and libraries that have dependencies where you have to have Python 2, for instance. So on like my actual machine, I have Python 3, but maybe for running this one piece of software, I need Python 2. So then I would set up a virtual environment that is on Python 2, and then I could download these libraries and set up the software that would need this older version of Python. And then I could like pull up my command line and access this virtual environment and like basically work with that code and run that software that uses the older version of Python or a different version, if that makes sense. Especially a lot of bigger pieces of software like might use Python 3.6. And if you update to Python 3.7, one of these libraries or kind of dependencies might break. And so nothing will work unless you're on a certain version. And so that's kind of where the virtual environments come in. But definitely not needed for this class. Maybe needed depending on what you're doing in the MHCI program, but I would still say probably not. I would say that kind of gets into the only time I've really had to dive into a lot of virtual environment and like Python version stuff is when I'm dealing with like kind of running someone else's software that has like 10 different libraries it uses that are from all over the place and they all need this one specific version of Python or else they don't work. And then it's like, okay, let me go and set it up. But admittedly, it's not terribly hard to do. There's lots of guides on it. But I wouldn't suggest really doing that. If that answered your question. There's a lot more information. Definitely one thing too that I want to be kind of central to this class too is kind of the notion of like help seeking, especially if you're kind of newer to programming. I don't know if you've seen any of the memes, but yeah, there's a thing about how programming is like 50% like using Stack Overflow, which is a website that people ask like questions about programming on and get answers to, like kind of form. Let's see if they have a Python one. Python requests. Well, this one's a little heavy, but you kind of post your question and then people answer it, and it's usually really good. Um, and so you don't necessarily only have to use that site, but just like I think I mentioned this too in the homework instructions, but if you ever have a question that's like, how do you square a number in Python? I definitely want to encourage y'all to literally just like open a new tab and like Python square number. And then you do get a lot of options, and you know you do want like a trusted site, but now look, there it is, Stack Overflow. And so you just kind of read the question, make sure it is asking the same thing you want, and then if you get onto the answers, usually it's a fairly concise and kind of backed up answer, especially if it has this many votes. And so it's like, oh, mass square root, or this, or POW. So definitely don't hesitate to search for an answer or consult the documentation, or make use of the wiki book, the non-programmer's tutorial, which has a lot of great stuff in it. um, and even the official Python 3 documentation, which I think I linked somewhere. Uh, yeah, I think in the homework. They're all really great resources. One thing I don't want you to do though is like go to Stack Overflow and copy some of the code straight off, especially for these earlier, simpler functions. Um, that's not how you learn, and that may be how some people do it in like practice, but definitely don't do that. And for some of maybe the heavier projects, um, or maybe the heavier like kind of homeworks that are way more involved, you can like use some of the code you may find online, but you would definitely want to give attribution to that. But we'll get to that bridge when it comes. But yeah, definitely make use of searching. Yeah, I would keep clicking this video. Definitely install what's on the official Python website. And for Mac, it'll come with the idle thing I keep talking about where you can type in. I'll do it again. So like right when you download it, if you search for like idle, IDLE, and this is my Python version, and you can see I have another one there. Then right when you open it, it'll be this, and that's where you can start kind of typing these different expressions out. X equals 5, x times 2, 10, because x has the value of 5. And then the homework's due Monday. Definitely Sunday nights, office hours. I set it up like that too because I feel like a lot of people will probably do the homework kind of the night before it's due. The homework's due Monday at like noon. Sunday night there's office hours. Um, everyone likes to procrastinate or wait till the last minute or they're busy. Um, but I guess the intention for that as well is that during the weekend, because I know a lot of y'all are currently working or doing other stuff in the summer before you start school, which I definitely support and agree with. And if you're like not working and just taking the summer off, I want you to enjoy your summer before you start working on this pretty intensive MHCI program. So I figured that weekends would hopefully kind of give you a little more free time to work on the homework. Um, if you wait and work on the homework on the weekend, you should still be able to finish it, assuming you did the module throughout the week, which none of those are really big. I think the biggest is like 10 pages. So hopefully, if you do like 2 pages a day during the week, then you can finish it, and you can do the quiz in time. The quiz shouldn't take too long either, and then you could do the homeworks on the weekend. And then Sunday night I will be around for office hours to help answer any homework questions or any other things in that regard. So it's kind of the intentional setup of those office hours and with the homework deadline. And I guess so. I was working with someone in this course about 3 years ago, and they did have a question that we did address in OLI, but just maybe help people with the homework is So if I'm working on the homework instructions and I pull up idle, let's actually, here, I'll just download the homework file. Yeah, so the homework instructions are also down here in Canvas. But I personally like kind of clicking it, downloading it so I can get the PDF for it. I think it's just a little nicely formatted. Like Canvas, it lost kind of this Courier new programming text. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think that the homework 1.py file did not get added to here. Oh yeah, it didn't. I will go add that right now. Well, actually, no, I'll wait till office hours because I don't want to go to my teacher view. But you should, I will add that. You should get a file on here that you can download. I'll make sure to put at the top called homework 1.py, which we can actually just recreate really easy right here. And it'll have these function definitions like print full name. For instance, and in the homework file, it will just say return none. So you'll have this, and there's 9 in total, right? So then if you download it, you can open it up with, and by default, it should open in idle. But if it doesn't, when you open up idle like this, you can just do, file open and find the file. So it'll open up like this, and they'll all return none. And this is also in the page that starts the module. It might be on the getting started guide. Yeah, it is where so you write the file and then you can hit F5 to run the script. So right here, this is my homework 1.py file right here, and then in run, and click run module, and you'll get the little restart text there. And now if I type, print full name, and it wants an F name and a last name. So nothing happens because it does return none. But if I do that now without running that homework 1 file, I get this error because it doesn't know that function exists, right? Because by default in like the land of Python, print underscore full underscore name with 2 parameters is just not a default function. So you have to run your Python file for you to be able to actually call that function. So make sure you run it. You'll get this little restart thing. There's the file name. And now you can, any function in this py file, you'll be able to call here. And if, you have to put in the parameters, at least 2. So if you do that, it lets you know, hey, that is a function, right? But you're not calling it per se. You're just referencing it from the shell. So, and if you put, this is still how you'd call a function, but ours takes in these 2 parameters, one being f name, one being l name. So when we don't put those in, it tells you right here, missing 2 required parameters, arguments. We call them parameters. So that's one thing, because I don't think it's explicitly laid out. It kind of is in this getting started with, but I know that can cause confusion. So, and you'll have a bunch of these. But then, yeah, the idea is you would kind of like write body here. So you would fill out the code on what the function's supposed to do, which if you go back to here, yeah, then I have this nice tag, which is kind of actually what I've gone over so far in these office hours of like, don't be afraid to search for help. Use print statements a ton. They will definitely be your friends the more we're in this course, which I'll touch on in a second. But yeah, there's going to be 9 functions, I believe, in the file. And here's a description of them on what you're supposed to fill out. And none of them are too lengthy. So it should, even though it's kind of 9 and it's a 3-page instruction text, I hope it's not too daunting. But it's like, oh, here's this function can vote. And it says based on. So then once I actually upload the file for y'all, which I totally forgot. Sorry. You'll have something like this, and then you read the description. This function should return a bool, either true or false, based on if the input age is 18 or over. And so then in your text right here, you would, write something that checks if this age is 18 or older and returns true or false. So, maybe I'd want to do the check like right here. Just go ahead and check if it's 18 or older, and then return that. But I don't want to solve it out yet. But that's kind of the idea. And I do believe they kind of scale up. I try to group them similarly, like these deal with strings. And then they kind of get progressively harder. And I would say the last two are the more difficult ones, but hopefully not too bad if you did the module. But again, if you are working on the homework and you have problems or run into trouble or just have questions, or maybe something isn't clear in the instructions of the homework, definitely post on Piazza or ask in the next office hours or even in the recitation. Especially on the clear part, like if you're ever doing a homework or a lab or anything in this course, and like for instance Canvo, it is pretty concise what the function does, but if you're reading it and you're like, oh, I don't really understand it, or like what about this edge case, or like what if this happens, should we account for that? Definitely post it on Piazza, like the sooner the better. And especially for those kind of questions too, I think it's good to post them on Piazza because your peers might be having the same question, because if it wasn't clear to you, then it may not be clear to others. So it's really good to post that in kind of a public space where others can see it, both the question and my response to it. Or another person's response. If someone does post, hey, I was doing the inches to yard function and I was wondering what we should do for like this case. And, someone else could respond to your question and say, oh, well, for that, I handled it this way. Or they could say, oh, I had the same question or something. Also, this homework is I definitely want to tailor the homeworks to be less like intro to CS 101 and more something that would pertain to like HCI in general, which was admittedly more difficult to do for this homework. So I kind of ignored that. But for the latter homeworks, especially the bigger ones, I will definitely be giving you all kind of more freedom where you won't just be filling in functions, but you'll actually be kind of making your own that do something that you could even maybe keep and use later in the program. Um, and also ones that are a little more entertaining than writing the quadratic equation. So don't worry, this won't be a very like mathy or just typical kind of intro CS one. I I do like the fact that all y'all are MHCI students, um, and definitely want to take advantage of that and give y'all not just like the knowledge of programming and computational thinking, but something that you can maybe refer back to and incorporate into the actual program. And of course, getting you all ready for the follow-up course, PUI, PUI, Programmable User Interfaces. Also in Canvas, there is a calendar. I guess I never addressed the stuff on the left, but there's the view. It's kind of also covered in the syllabus and stuff. There's an inbox if you want to like kind of message me on Canvas. Feel free to just send me an email to my actual email address in the syllabus, or you could inbox through Canvas. Either way, I can respond through my Gmail, and I get an email with it either way. So honestly, whatever's easier for y'all works for me. You can check your grades here. So the out of scores right now for the homeworks will probably change, but that shouldn't be too bad. Oh, also you can Oh, never mind, they changed it. I kind of hate this view for grades, and they did have a way to change it, but I don't believe they have it anymore on Canvas. It's unfortunate. Oh, one thing too on the homeworks that I just really want to reiterate are at the bottom, which can totally get missed, is there's this rubric. And so, as I mentioned, there's kind of 9 functions. Each one will be out of 2 points. And you can see how they're graded, which for this one is pretty straightforward. Hey, if it runs correctly, like if I'm able to run it and it passes the test cases and it returns the values and it doesn't error out, you'll get the full marks. If for some reason, I type in or it runs storage container and it doesn't work, um, then we'll look at the function and it's like, oh, well, there's just this typo or the indentation was wrong. But once it's fixed, then it returns correct, then you'll get a point off for that. But if it's like a blank function altogether, then you will not get points for that. Does this course grade count towards your GPA in fall? I don't believe it does count towards your GPA. I'm pretty sure it does not. Um, I can double check on that and get back to you, but I'm pretty sure it won't. But if you like fail this course or perform poorly in it, then you have to like kind of take it again during fall, while you're doing like all your courses in MPUI. Um, so I definitely would encourage at least trying. Um, but yeah, I'm fairly certain it won't go towards your GPA. But in the past, a few students have done not the best in the course and then had to make it up in fall on top of their other courses. So just adding another course to that already pretty intensive workload didn't really make things any easier. And so, it can make like your other courses suffer, and then that would impact your GPA. Also, you will be using these not just in that follow-up course, but throughout the MHCI program, especially like the fundamentals in here. So that should hopefully be enough motivation for everyone to try your best on this, because these are skills that are not just useful but ones that you'll be using a ton in the program and potentially after. Which can get so yeah, if you do, that's why if you are struggling in any part, definitely speak up so we can help clarify any of those misconceptions, because a lot of the courses in the program expect that you either already have this knowledge or went through this course. And so, if you're working on this project that's due next week and it does involve this bit of programming, um, the time you might take to kind of spin up on that could be better put toward that project. Like the instructors will just assume you already have this knowledge and they won't bake that into the course any. So it'll just be kind of extra work down the road. But I expect everyone to do well in the course too. So I think toward modules 7 and 8, the kind of last two, um, will still be on OLI, but I think I'll also add a couple of extra kind of material things through one of these like page posts, that'll be at the start of the modules to start this transition into what you'll need for not just the program, but in particular for the follow-up course, uh, the programmable user interfaces (PUI), because that's in JavaScript and we're in Python, and it's it's intentionally in Python because I think, especially for novices, Python is the way to go to teach programming and computational thinking. And for other courses in the MHA program, um, they may use Python or another language, and so it's better to learn like these concepts in Python, because then they like readily transfer to JavaScript as opposed to like teaching a course that's just in JavaScript. So that's kind of the rationale behind that. But I want to, especially for the last 2 weeks, kind of start getting toward more JavaScript-like things. Um, so it's more of like kind of like a seamless transition. And I might have, depending on if there's any interest, like I could do another optional week that dives into like kind of more of the web side of things that is readily in JavaScript. Um, so I can kind of help with the transfer on that if there's any interest. Um, but yeah, what you learn in this course and the Python is, if you do well in this course, you'll be easily able to do any of the programming stuff for PUI and JavaScript with Jason. Fun course, really. You do some interesting and cool work, and you can build up your portfolio and all that. Hmm. Well, we made it this far. Well, I was wondering if we'd go the full hour. I don't really think I have anything else to talk about right now, but I will probably just stick around in case anyone comes on last minute, or if anyone has any other questions or about the program or about the course or programming in general. Or about like I guess the platforms we're using. Like if you are tuned in now and really hate that we're using YouTube Live. Kind of hope when I go back and play this video that my mic quality is not really trash. Or that the thumbnail is just like a large pic of my face. Yeah, no lie, there's like green text like this, which you can kind of hover over for a definition, which is kind of nice. Um, guess just more on OLI to fill some time. There's the learn by doings are more intended. So like as I mentioned earlier, um, it's you're not necessarily supposed to get the questions right the first time, right? It's supposed to be used as a learning opportunity. Um, for you to kind of gauge how well you're getting the material and to be a learning opportunity if you do get the material incorrect, thanks to the feedback. And so that's what kind of learn by doings are. And the did I get this activities are in the same vein, but they are a little more intended to, as you might be implied by the name, uh, tell you if you should like kind of reread or refocus on the material. Um, so like after doing these two and reading the text, it is more expected that you would get the did I get this right? And if you did get it incorrect, maybe I'd want to like try these problems again or read this or consult something else. But again, they should still have feedback that'll help you. Examples obviously go by the name. It's an example of the concept. We already talked about the definitions. Many student wonder is about common misconceptions we've had. As I said, we've used this course a decent amount from past years and from other courses, um, and with a bunch of students. And so, the more we use it, the more we're able to tell, okay, well, even with the content we have on this page, students do still have this kind of question or run into this problem when they're doing the lab or the homeworks. And so that's kind of where these come from. So they are worth reading. And then the first homework, or not first homework, that too, but in particular the lab for this week really does deal with a lot of stuff on this page with the kind of values and operations you can do in Python. If you ever see a problem like this with the dots, it means it's a paged question. So you can keep trying. Um, but again, if you're, on like the first set or you get to page 2 or 3 and you've got all of them correct, then, feel free to skip 4 or 5, or if you just want the extra practice. Most of the videos in here, there are a few, not that many, but they are fairly short. So might be worth watching. But again, the big thing is practice, practice, practice. So, you see this, for instance, maybe you will just want to pop up an idle, type it in, and hey, now you know. And then so you shouldn't just, if you want to answer the question, I wouldn't just mindly copy and paste it and then like paste the value back in here. But really like kind of like break it down like, oh, order of operations, it's going to do these parentheses first. So this is 15, and then that's greater than or equal to, and then over here, it's going to do the multiplication first. So we're 10 plus 2, which I know is actually just 12. So then true, and then, oh, well, 15 is greater than or equal to 12, which makes sense because 15 is a larger number. So, the expression evaluates to true, which intuitively makes sense because that's how numbers work. And anytime you see little hyperlinks, you can get a pop-up, which is referring back to the example we saw on what page 4 was it? Another little short video. Referencing back to that table. Important for the lab and homework. This page in particular, the abstracting code with functions, I would say pretty useful for the homework. Does some pretty similar things. So if you do kind of find, especially on the latter homework problems, if you are getting stuck, you may want to consult this page. Yeah, hopefully this maybe something I should have touched on more. Um, but calling functions from a function is a very key programming concept. That so, for instance, if I have like function one, can't type, and let's just make this print. This is function one. Then over here, if I have function two, I am able to call my function, my first function, or any function that's in here that we've defined. So I can print this is function two, and then I should be able to call function one from there. So what that does is I'm calling function two. So then it reads this first line, which prints out this function two, and then it makes it a call to function one, which then kind of jumps back up here and executes the code in here. So this will be used for the first kind of time more heavily in the next week's module and the module after that. So you will get, kind of some more instruction on that and some more examples to practice with it, and it'll be a big part of the homeworks, and kind of just programming in general. So just wanted to give a little exposure to that, which I think it kind of touches on. But again, if this is still foreign to you, don't worry. There's more text, and it really comes into play later. You won't have to do that for any of the homework this week, but just let you know that that's a thing. So we will be covering this more. But it's useful because it's a good programming habit to kind of make different functions do different things. You wouldn't want to just have one function. Like I wouldn't want to just have function two be huge. Like, you can imagine I could have, I mean, you would never really want to do this. So especially with indentation, just if I had it do a bunch of code, that was like 1,000 lines, for instance, then it's like, oh, there's an error in function two. Let me look at it. And it's, you're scrolling and you're looking through all these lines and it's doing all this stuff. It's not a good programming practice. So you definitely want to kind of divide functions up by like what they do. So, if I wanted to have like I don't know, like multiplying function that takes in a number and does something with it. And then, if I want to have another function that like prints it a bunch, takes in that same number after it's multiplied and then print in, and then in my function, which will take an n, I want to x equals multiplying, and then we pass in that value again. And now, well, I'll walk through it in a second. And then we just want to print a bunch x. Whoop. Yeah, I always need a colon after the functions. Thankfully, it tells you that. So now, what that does is I'm calling this function, and I passed it in this parameter in, which corresponds to 5, right? So in has this value of 5, and now I have this variable x that I'm assigning to be the result of multiplying in. So I pass in 5 right here into my func, and it's basically doing this, multiplying with 5, because right in has the value of 5. So we jump over here, and it returns, which is big. We're going to say this n is 5, so then this n becomes 5, so it's 5 times 2, which is 10. So it is returning this value of 10. So once it's executed, it's basically like saying this, x is equal to 10, because we return it. Again, if we did not return it, that would not be the case. Like if we just printed it, then x would not have that value. So returning is important, which return versus print and all that is also covered in the OLI modules. But with a value of x of 10 then, we pass in that value x, which is 10 after being in the multiplying function, and it calls prints a bunch, which then just prints this value 10, 10, 10 three times, which is what we get here. So, calling functions from other functions and passing variables, key programming concepts that, again, we touch on more in the following weeks, particularly next week. These concepts aren't really used in the homework, but you will be using them soon. So just wanted to give a little teaser about those and to honestly fill up the rest of Leo's office hours. So if there's no more questions about anything, I'm going to stop the stream, and then this video should take probably around 15 minutes to process, and it'll be uploaded. And I'll make an announcement on Canvas this time, just to let everyone know. But I probably won't do that for the following ones. But yeah, thanks of those of y'all that tuned in. Hopefully it was helpful. For the kind of latter weeks, if there aren't that many questions and there's not more people tuning in, I probably will cut them a little short. But yeah, hope it was helpful, and I will see any of y'all that tune in Thursday to the lab, which I would encourage. But again, if you can't make it, don't fret. It'll be uploaded to YouTube, this channel. So you should be able to click the same link, click the videos tab, the link in the syllabus, and view the recitation after the fact, which again, we'll be going over the lab, kind of working out the lab out entirely, showing my thinking process on that and answering any questions that may come up with it. And again, the lab is due right before I go live for that kind of lab recitation. So be sure to get that in Thursday by 11:59 a.m. EST. So you have about 2 days for that. Yeah, hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. Again, that one page in OLI in particular will be quite useful for the lab. I think it was 4. Maybe it was 3. No, okay, here it is. Yeah, 5. This will definitely help you with the lab, but it should also be, at least for one, straightforward, because I want you to type these in to your Python interpreter. So you can go in the shell, and I want you to see what these evaluate to, so you can really understand these operations. And then 2 and 3, you to actually write your own function, which again the OLI modules should help with, especially I think it was page 7. But yeah, thanks y'all. Have a good week, and post on Piazza or email me if anything comes up.